All right, so today we'll look at muscle as a tissue. This is the last type of basic tissue that we're going to look at. We have covered epithelial, we have covered connective tissue, we have covered nerve tissue, and now finally, we are covering muscle tissue. In addition to that, we'll look at tendons also, then finally look at fascia, but the main focus is on muscle as a tissue. So this structure here is a must know when we're talking about muscle as a tissue. So here we have a bone. Skeletal muscles, to be specific, are called skeletal because they are attached to the skeleton, which are bones, and their actions produce movement or locomotion of the skeleton. What we have is tendon connecting the bone to the muscle, or connecting muscle to the bone. That's the best way of looking at it. Connects muscle to the bone. Now, a tendon can be called aponeurosis if it is flat. But when it is round like a cord or a rope, we call it a tendon. But if it's flat, we call them aponeurosis. Same structure, just difference in shape, but serves the same purpose, is to connect the muscle to the skeleton. What we have there is a muscle. For example, you can think of muscle like a biceps muscle in the arm there. Now, that muscle, we call it a muscle because it's not one cell. Rather, it is made up of hundreds, thousands of cells in one. So we call it a group of muscle. Okay, muscle cells. So this structure is a muscle, like I'm saying. So what we have here is a fascicle. So that's one fascicle, another fascicle, another fascicle, another fascicle here. So fascicles are simply a collection of individual muscle cells. So what we have inside are individual muscle cells. That's a muscle cell, muscle cell, muscle cell, forming this one bundle, another bundle here. So that's a fascicle and a fascicle. So we see that one muscle group is composed of several fascicles, and each fascicle is composed of several individual muscle cells, which we are calling muscle fibers. That's one muscle cell. That's a muscle cell. Now, before we go even further, I want you to observe the arrangement that the entire muscle group is covered in a connective tissue known as epimysium. This layer here is connective tissue, loose, dense connective tissue. This is dense connective tissue. Then each fascicle, that's a fascicle, that's a fascicle. The gray line we are seeing here, which is shown here, is another layer of connective tissue, this time loose connective tissue. So this is perimysium, epimysium. Dense connective tissue, loose connective tissue. Then each individual muscle fiber, like this, it has a cell membrane, but on top of that is covered in endomysium, which is shown to be yellowish here. That's endomysium around each individual muscle cell. So in short, each muscle group is going to have 3 layers of connective tissue coverings. The outer one being epimysium, inner being perimysium, around the fascicle, around a fascicle, like here. Then endoneurium around each individual muscle fiber or individual muscle cell. What these connective tissue are doing are offering those functions of connective tissue we discussed, physical as well as metabolic support. You can see some blood vessels there, artery, vein, artery, vein. What those are bringing to the muscle are nutrients and gases. Then, as these 3 layers of connective tissue leave the muscle, they are the ones that form a tendon now here, or aponeurosis. So you see a muscle cells are ending somewhere here, then continues as tendon or aponeurosis. That's why you can't separate the two. A tendon or aponeurosis is simply a continuation of these three coverings we've talked about, and then they go and insert into a bone. So you must know how to draw and label this structure. Commonly asked to label this structure. So definition, we're saying muscles, these are contractile tissues in the body. So this is the only tissue in the body that has property to contract and relax. And because of their contraction and relaxation, muscles produce movement. They have that ability to contract and relax because these cells are specialized in such a sense that their cytoplasm has special proteins known as actin and myosin. Actin, we call them thin filaments. Myosin, we call it thick filaments. Because of presence of those filaments, muscles have the ability to contract and relax. Worth mentioning is that all cells have actin and myosin, but the amount and the arrangement is different. Muscle have the highest and well-organized actin and myosin filaments, which make a contractile apparatus. We'll come to that shortly. So origin, we're saying all muscles in the body originate from the mesoderm. This is the middle layer of the embryo. Okay, so embryo has 3 layers. This is amniotic fluid, by the way. Then this is a yolk sac below. Yolk sac below, that is amniotic cavity. So the fetus will grow into the amniotic cavity. The yolk sac keeps on reducing in size until it is completely obliterated because it's non-functional in humans. It only serves as a source of sperm cells and oocytes. Once those cells leave the yolk sac can now degenerate. So by the time the fetus is growing, the yolk sac is very small. It's not even seen. So this is a yolk sac below. Unless in eggs. In eggs, yes, like eggs of birds and other animals like crocodiles and the rest. The yolk sac acts as a source of nutrients to the growing embryo. But in humans, it has no further function apart from what I've mentioned. So the outer layer is known as ectoderm. Middle layer is known as mesoderm. Then the inner layer is known as endoderm. So epithelial tissue originates from the endoderm. Muscle tissue originates from the mesoderm. Then nerve tissue originates from the ectoderm. Nerve, muscle, epithelial tissue. Connective tissue also originates from mesoderm. Connective tissue from mesoderm. So this is an embryo at this stage. Ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. Okay. All right. Okay. So functions of muscles, first of all. What are muscles doing in the body? Number one, muscles provide movement to the whole organism. For the body to move from one point to the other is muscle. Again, contents in the body to move from one region to the next. For example, blood, the heart is beating there. For example, urine from the kidneys into the bladder, from the bladder to the urethra, all those are muscles. Okay. Apart from that, storage. Muscles store huge amounts of protein. Muscles store huge amounts of carbohydrates in form of glycogen. So muscles are storage sites. Apart from that, muscles also store huge amount of calcium for their contraction. Next is muscles act as protective function. So we see that the entire body is covered in muscle. And that way, it offers protection. For example, the abdomen here, there are no bones in front of the abdomen. They're just muscles protecting internal organs there. In times of coldness, muscles undergo repeated contraction and relaxation process known as shivering. As a result, the byproduct is heat, and that heat enables to regulate temperature. Okay, that's why if someone has been running for a long period of time without resting, you find that heat accumulates a lot, and these are people that faint. In addition to accumulation of lactic acid, heat stroke is another issue of overuse from muscles. So generally, these are the functions of muscle in the body. Let's look at classification. How do we classify muscles? So muscles can be classified based on their appearance under a microscope. We call this as microscopic appearance. So when you're classifying muscles under microscopic or histological features, we have two types. We have striated muscles. Under this striated muscle, we have skeletal muscle and cardiac muscle. Based on location, we have three types. We have muscles that are found with the body. Muscles of the body, we call them somatic muscles. For example, muscles in the thigh, muscles in the arm, muscles in the neck. We call them somatic body and somatic muscles. Then muscles to do with blood vessels and organs. Muscles in the alimentary canal, muscles in the blood vessels, muscles of the bladder, muscles of the ureters, urethra, muscles of the uterus. All those are visceral muscles. Then a special type of muscle found only in the heart, cardiac muscle. So there we're looking at location. Is it with the body? Is it with internal organs or with the heart? Function. We have voluntary and involuntary muscles. Muscles that we control with our conscious mind, we call them voluntary. Muscles that we can't control with our conscious mind, we call them involuntary muscles. Voluntary muscle example given are muscles of the skeleton. We decide when to move, when to sit, when to run. Involuntary muscles examples given, muscles of the lower esophagus, muscles of the stomach, muscles of the intestines. We don't decide when food should move to the small intestine, to the large intestine. All those things occur subconsciously. Then types of muscles. Generally, we have three types of muscles. Skeletal ones, muscles associated with the skeleton. Cardiac, these are muscles found in the heart. And finally, smooth muscles. These are muscles associated with internal organs and all tubes in the body. Example given, ureter, fallopian tube, uterus, bladder. All those are smooth muscles. That's a summary with their pictorial representation. So what we have here are skeletal muscles, cardiac muscle, smooth muscle. So from here, you can already see them difference. Skeletal muscles are long, longest of all, followed by cardiac muscles, then smooth muscles. Now, what we have is that skeletal muscles here, see that they have a multiple nucleus, and they have these vertical lines, which we call striations. Those striations are also found on cardiac muscles. So the two are considered as striated muscles. But if you compare the number of nucleus, cardiac muscles have single nucleus, single nucleus. Here we have multiple nucleus. In addition, cardiac muscles have these darker vertical lines, bigger ones actually. We call them intercalated discs. These represent joints between two muscles or junctions. So this is one muscle, that's another muscle here. In addition to that, observe that cardiac muscles are branching. We have this muscle splitting in half,